Alright, we have to talk about the FOMC meeting. For people who are unaware, this meeting lasts for 2 days. It's going to be starting later at about 2 a.m. In Singapore timing, which is about maybe a halfway mark in the trading day later on for the United States. But anyway, by the time you actually watch this video, chances are the meeting is going to be adjourning in a bit. So we are most likely going to be getting the results a day after this video is out. Okay, but anyway, I just want to go through some expectation. And I think it's quite clear the things that people who knows about this kind of FOMC meeting expectation, you probably already know. It's going to be a rate hike, it's going to be a rate pause, or a rate cut. We're not putting the rate cut on the table because chances are it's not going to be happening unless we do have any level of a black swan event happening anytime soon, which we don't see that happening. That is off the table for now. So the same argument that the bulls and the bears constantly fight for, which is a hike or a pause. The last FOMC actually given us quite a good message in some sense, because they actually paused for the first time in I think about almost 2 years. Okay, and we haven't really had any kind of a pause before, so that was actually pretty good. But despite getting a pause in the market wasn't exactly euphoric over it, because there wasn't any form of like, oh, this is great news, because everyone knew for a fact that this pause is not there to stay. So today, my expectation is that we will not get a pause and we will get a hike of 25 basis points. And I know that it is not really a popular opinion, because the thing is that a lot of people on the street are actually expecting a pause instead of a hike. And I can tell you that because the chances of it actually pausing is actually a lot higher than it hiking. But my personal expectation for it to hike actually comes down to a few different considerations. The first consideration is, of course, inflation. And I get it. Okay, inflation, of course, peaked in 2022. Right now in 2023, basically, it's kind of quite mellowed out. And only in the last month of CPI that we just got last week, that was the first time that we actually saw inflation spike up to 0.6% month over month. And I think that data actually is going to be playing quite a big role in this FOMC meeting. Because not only are we talking about the spike in inflation for this current month, well, effectively last month, but we have to talk about why inflation is actually going up as well. And it's going to be coming down to oil, which is energy prices. And oil prices, we're expecting oil prices to still be going up quite sharply in the short term. And the only way for you to control that right now is not by fixing the supply, simply because we are unable to do anything regarding the production of the oil, because the United States don't really have that much say. So what they can only do is by increasing interest rates. Because if they increase interest rates, effectively, oil prices have to come down. That's the only instrument that the Federal Reserve can use, and they probably will have to use. Because if they suddenly see a spike up in inflation, despite all the 18 different meetings that they have been taking throughout the entire 2 years, to hike all the way down to the last meeting for them to pause, and for inflation to still spike up a little bit at the end, kind of weird. So I do think that they are most likely going to be increasing a 25 basis point. But what they can actually do is for Jerome Powell to come out and maybe adopt a slightly dovish tone and just be like, yeah, honestly, we're doing this simply because oil prices is kind of doing what it's doing right now, and we want to ensure that we want to ensure a victory over this whole entire inflation battle. And I think that's going to be something that Jerome Powell would most likely want to talk about. And that's provided they do actually increase the interest rates. And of course, the thing is that with how all these different current interest rates at the moment, even for ECB, I think that they would most likely want to follow suit with what ECB is doing as well. And if you're not understanding what ECB is, and also all the different world central banks, you can check my last video out. I basically talked about how the market is going crazy because all the different countries' central bank are doing completely different things, and it's just kind of a weird thing that's going on right now. And I think that the US most likely don't want to just follow anyone else, but I do think that an increase in interest rates would most likely be the right play. Getting it up just by another 25 basis point, and then the next meeting I'll be totally fine with like rates pause all the way throughout. This is not really a bear play or a bull play, simply because I do think that the interest rates needs to go up just a little bit more, because clearly it is not helping with the core inflation either. So let's talk about core inflation. Okay, because for the CPI reports that we actually get every single month, we know for a fact that core inflation has actually been quite persistent. Core inflation is basically just inflation without food prices and energy prices. So we are not even talking about oil prices anymore, and it's still persisting. Without food prices, and it's still persisting, which means that all these different inflationary measures that we actually have in place to stop inflation is clearly not enough. So I do think that maybe just adding on a little bit of a nail down, just knocking it into the coffin for that 25 basis point increment, I think it might help. Of course, we do not know, because when the next meeting do come about, we might actually come back to the same scenario again, where we realize that we might need another 25 basis point increment. And of course, I think that's a lot of the other side's argument is going to be, then when is it going to be enough? Because if you continuously just keep on adding in interest rates, you keep on hiking the interest rates, it is going to come back and bite you in the ass in about a year to two, because usually all these are a lagging consequential effect, and it's going to be affecting you later on down the line. So for us to just kind of keep banging in the interest rates in right now, it's not going to be turning out well in the next 1 to 2 years or so, because that's going to be affecting the whole entire economy. Prices of everything's going to be everything's going to be too expensive to afford, because interest rate is so high. Car prices are going to be too hard for you to afford, because you have to loan money to get your cars, you have to loan money to get a house, you have to loan credit card debts in general. All these different things all have to do with your interest rates as well. So I do think that them not going through with like a 50 basis point, 75 basis point hike, like what they were doing in the earlier part of 2023, I think that's kind of correct. I think that's why they are really kind of coming back down to the 25 basis point increment rather than going through with the 50 and 75s. So yeah, I do think that there's a very, very good chance that we would see a hike. But of course, if we do see a pause in the rate hikes, I do foresee Jerome Powell still banging that hawkish tone. And I do understand why as well, because for him to bang the hawkish tone is to ensure that people do not immediately think that we are finally going to be pausing for good, we are only going to be going down from here on out, and that is why you should just start spending money. And whatever that they've done for the past 2 years, poof, completely pointless. So I do see the hawkish tone for Jerome Powell is going to be a tough battle for them to get rid of inflation as a whole. So I think inflation is going to be that big of an issue right now. And I think oil prices is not really making the Fed's job any easier at the moment. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for us to see what Jerome Powell actually comes up with in tomorrow's, or well, technically tonight's summary. He's most likely going to be coming out, going through the whole entire FOMC summary, and also with the Q&A with all the different mainstream media. I think that's going to be quite interesting for us to actually catch up on as well. I will most likely be doing a summary video on that as well. I would upload it on Saturday. I'll see how that would actually go. But anyway, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye.